Hello friends, welcome back to another video. Today I'm going to be doing another 5-minute book review, and today we're going to be talking about The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab. This is a historical fantasy that was released in 2020. This book has gotten a lot of social media attention over the past few years, including being one of the original Book Talk books and being a consistent pick for readers all over the world consistently for years now. The summary of this book is France 1714. In a moment of desperation, a young woman named Adeline meets a dangerous stranger and makes a terrible mistake. After she realizes the limitations of her Faustian bargain, being able to live forever without being able to be remembered by anyone she sees, Addie chooses to flee her small village, and everything she once held dear is torn away. But there are still dreams to be had and a life to live, and she is determined to find excitement and satisfaction in the wide, beckoning world, even if she will be doomed to be alone forever. Or not quite alone, as every year on their anniversary, the alluring Luke comes to visit, checking to see if she's ready to give up her soul. Their darkly thrilling game stretches through the ages, seeing Adeline witness history and fight to regain herself after she crosses oceans and tries on various lives. It will be 300 years before she stumbles into a hidden bookstore and discovers someone who can remember her name, and suddenly everything changes again. This book has such a unique premise, which is one of the reasons why I was super intrigued to read it. And before I get into some of my thoughts on it, I just wanted to mention the cover real quick. As you can see, it is black book with gold lettering. It has almost like a little constellation in the middle of the words. So there are 7 stars, and the 7 stars are actually a reference to the freckles that Addie has on her face. She has 7 freckles that everyone says looks like stars when they first meet her. And I personally think that this cover is absolutely stunning because of the fact that it ties in so closely to a point of the story that is mentioned over and over again. I think is really, really cool. And as you heard from the summary, this book has such a unique premise, and I honestly think it's one of the more unique instances of immortality in books, kind of posing the question to you, what would you do if you could live forever? But also you couldn't have relationships, meaning that you couldn't have a job, you couldn't have a home, you couldn't have a phone, you couldn't have any sort of friendships or romantic relationships, and you couldn't even have a bank account. What would you do? How would you live your life? And can you imagine the weight of someone coming up to you and remembering your name after almost 300 years of no one knowing who you were? This book personally pulled me in for the draw of wanting to learn what happens when someone can learn her name. Who is this person who remembers her name, and why can he remember it? And that question of who is this person and why can he remember her name was something that made me want to just dive into this book headlong. But this book left me pondering a completely different question, such as, what does it mean to leave your mark on the world, and what are various ways that you have left your mark on the world, whether or not you realize it? And both the relationship between Addie and the person that she meets and these questions that I have posed are all written absolutely beautiful in this book. This was my first V.E. Schwab book, and I was absolutely impressed by her writing. V.E. Schwab's writing is almost magical. The way that she portrays feelings and events is smooth and beautiful. The only way that I know how to describe her writing is, in my mind, it's almost melodic. And I mean that almost literally. It felt so melodic that I could almost hear the melody of what she was writing and the feel of the setting just through her words. The pacing of this book is also very, very consistent, and it's not a fast-paced book either. V.E. Schwab takes her time with this story. It's dual timeline, and I really enjoyed the dual timeline aspect of it. Even when it's the climax of the book, the pacing remains consistent, giving it a very smooth voice all the way through. And the ending of this book has one of those perfect bittersweet endings that we all know and love in books that have a more literary feel. It was not tied up in a bow. It was not a happily ever after, but it still had a hopeful outlook at the end. All these are obviously positives towards the book, but I do have a couple things about this book that I was not a huge fan of as well, so I will jump into those. Like I said before, the pacing of this book is very consistent, and because of that, sometimes it read a little bit slow. There were also 2 aspects of her living through 300 years of history that I felt like were not up to their fullest potential. One of them being that Addie only lived in like 4 countries in 300 years. I think when I went into this book, I was kind of hoping to see how she made her mark across every single continent continent over 300 years. And I think for someone who said that she wanted to see and experience so much, the fact that she only stayed in a very small pocket of Europe and then went across to America does not necessarily show that she wanted to have a very diverse life experience. So I thought that that was a little bit of a contradiction, and I was a little disappointed. I definitely feel like that was a missed opportunity by V.E. Schwab. The second thing that I thought was a little bit disappointing with her living over such a long lifetime was it is very rarely mentioned where Addie was or what she was doing during historical events. There were a few times that it was mentioned, like the plague or one of the world wars, where it mentioned her doing something, but those were only very brief mentions that she was around during these things or what happened. And I would have been very intrigued to know a little bit more in depth what she did during those historical events to leave her mark on the world. So I feel like that was a second missed opportunity as well. That being said, all in all, I really did enjoy this book. I ended up giving it a 4.25 stars, which is a very high rating. And if you've been intrigued by what I've said about this book, then I would definitely recommend it to you. There is language and some sprinklings of spice in this book. So if you're someone who is more conscientious of those kind of things, just keep that in mind. I highly recommend this book. It has definitely taken the internet by storm for a very good reason. That is the end of my review. I hoped that this helped you decide whether or not you would like to read The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Comment down below if this is a book that you would like to read, or if there is another book that you would like me to read and review in the future. I hope you guys have a great day, and I'll see you guys next time.